Hajira Syed. This is a real image of an electron microscope of an animal. It's magnified around 100 times. And it's an animal that I'm confident that you all have seen before. I'm going to play a guessing game with you all. Hopefully by the end of this, you guys will have some idea as to what it is. I'll give you 3 hints, hopefully you can guess. This animal is the size of a grain of rice. It weighs just less than 2.5 milligrams. And it is the most dangerous animal in the world. Not really something scary, right? But if I just ask you the question, what is the most dangerous animal in the world? I think most of us would think of something like a shark. It's inherently scary, right? But if you look at the numbers, sharks only cause about 10 deaths per year. Maybe you thought of humans. It's a pretty good guess. 450,000 people are taken by humans per year. And mosquitoes. Over 700,000 lives are taken each year just due to mosquito-borne diseases. And mosquito-borne diseases, they're illnesses caused by a virus or a parasite that an infected mosquito comes with and bites you. And different mosquitoes transmit different diseases. I'll go over 3 of the main big ones with you guys. The one to the far right is called the Culex mosquito. It transmits West Nile virus and encephalitis, a common equine disease, prevalent in the United States. The one in the middle with the striped legs is called Aedes aegypti. It transmits chikungunya, dengue, yellow fever, and Zika, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. Zika causes that characteristic birth defects in newborns that cause smaller heads and that are flattened. One to the far right, it's called an Anopheles mosquito. That is what transmits malaria, the deadliest disease in human history. I'll sum up malaria in just a small statement. I have 15 minutes to talk with you guys. By the end of this 15 minutes, 15 people will be dead due to malaria. 10 of those people will be children under the age of 5. How did it get so bad? How did we arrive here? Well, there's 3 factors that I've compiled. First one being migration. Around 100 to 2 million years ago, we saw the first emergence of mosquitoes during the Jurassic period. And around the same time, we saw the continental drift happening. So we saw the allowance of the spread of mosquitoes to almost all parts of the globe. And originally, mosquitoes didn't even feed on blood. They fed on nectar, and slowly they started blood feeding on animals. Until 2 million years ago, when we saw the emergence of humans. That's when we saw the first cases of malaria in humans. The second factor is domestication and urbanization. Once humans started living in groups together, mosquitoes had a field day. We had congestion, more people concentrated in one place. We had poor sanitation and stagnant water, all of which are just are perfect for breeding and feeding for mosquitoes. And I think we're all pretty familiar with climate change. But I'll tell you this, as global temperatures rise, we see mosquitoes having increased levels of activity, and they have more environment available to them. For example, places like Canada or Northern Europe that were once deemed too cold for mosquitoes are now perfectly habitable for them. That's bad. And I want to take all these 3 factors and relate them to our very own home, Kentucky. Before World War II, Kentucky was all wilderness. We had streams, creeks, forests, and a lot of mosquitoes. What a lot of people don't know is that Kentucky, at that point in time, was located right in the middle of what we call the American Malaria Belt, between the Ohio and Mississippi River Basin, the epicenter of that malaria belt. And during the war, the US Army decided to keep a Army reserve right there, a training camp. And so we brought hundreds and thousands of soldiers into that one place. It's pretty unfortunate, but what do you think happened with the congestion within the barracks, those open drain ditches in the mess halls? It was a mosquito explosion. We saw soldiers writing home saying that they were fighting more mosquitoes than they were enemies. We had infirmaries filled to the brim with people complaining of fevers and chills and malaria-like symptoms, most often resulting in death. So the US Army knew they had to do something about it, right? And quickly, because people are dying. So what they did, they launched the US's largest vector control program to this day. They introduced a chemical called DDT, and it worked wonders. In just a few years, malaria was eradicated in Kentucky. Great, right? But DDT, it's a synthetic compound, highly synthetic. And so when they started spraying and getting rid of malaria, we saw some things happening. It lingers in our ecosystems. So we'll find it in our water streams, in our soil, within the food chain, and it stays there because it's a synthetic compound. And so I told myself, and I took these factors into consideration, and I said, all right, we need something that, like DDT, is effective, yet we need something that isn't as harmful to the environment. So I did some research, and I found something called citronella, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, specifically into the essential oils of citronella. Citronella, it's natural, it's non-synthetic, it's biodegradable, and it won't linger in our ecosystems, which is what's most important. Since citronella oil is already used to prevent bites in humans. So I told myself, what if we look at it from a different angle? What if, instead of preventing bites, we prevent something else, like egg laying? A female mosquito, lays hundreds of eggs at a time. So if we stop that from happening, we would essentially stop hundreds of future mosquitoes from emerging in the first place. And so I took those two things and I experimented on it. I've been experimenting on mosquitoes for the past few summers now. I looked at things like, what's a mosquito's favorite color? I found out that it was red and black. I looked at things like, does elevated CO2 play any role in mosquito behavior? Also, yes. I found out that elevated CO2 actually increases mosquito activity. So with that prior knowledge, I took it, I went to the lab, and I tested for citronella oil and its effects in egg laying. What I found was great. When I tested higher levels of citronella oil, I had eradicated all of the eggs laid, which was great, right? But I wanted to take it one step further. I told myself, citronella oil is a mixture, right? So what if we took a single element or a single compound from that mixture? It'd be easier to synthesize and then apply. So I took the chemical composition of citronella oil. So each peak here represents a compound that makes up citronella oil. The highest one being something called geraniol. So that's the major component of citronella oil. So I did the exact same thing that I did with citronella oil. I took geraniol, I tested it, and this is what I found. While geraniol was also effective in reducing the number of eggs laid, it wasn't as effective as citronella oil. So I got to thinking that what makes citronella oil so good is the interaction between those compounds. And this is really important. I proved that instead of killing all of these mosquitoes, we can instead disrupt a cycle of egg laying. And we can use it with a completely environmentally friendly, sustainable alternative. We are going into extremely unprecedented times in terms of mosquito control. And I'll show you this. These are urban world. It shows the percentage of people living in urban cities in 2020, in 2000, and 2050. It's a prediction. Over 50% of our world is currently living in urban populations. And I've already explained a little bit, but we're only seeing an increase in people living in these urban cities. So factors like increased urbanization, higher temperatures, it only gives us more reason for change to happen quickly. If I've found something amazing, and all these factors give us reason for change. So whether it's through something as simple as an essential oil, or increased knowledge of mosquito behavior, or increased research from students like myself or professionals in this topic, I think we'd see a lot of benefits. One small animal, like a mosquito, weighs 2.5 milligrams, right? If it changed the course of history to that extent, just imagine how much we can do if we change our ways of thinking, if we change simple ways, if we change our ways to thinking more on sustainability, things like that. I think we'd see a lot of great things happening. Thank you so much for your time.